Vrindai Hai Tulsidevai Priyai Hai Kesavasya Vishnu Bhakti Pradedeve Satya Vachai Namo Namaha. Jai Tulsi Maharani ki Jai. All right. So nice to be here again. How you go? So today is a special day in the Vaishnava calendar. It is the disappearance day of Vrindavan Das Thakur. We're going to have the yes. So we're going to chant the prayers to the departed Vaishnavas. And it's called Saparshada Gora Viraha Vilapa. It's good to see everybody this morning. Okay. Hare Krishna. All right. Got everybody? Whoop. Some of the devotees left already.
They're outside.
They're outside?
I'll put your mic.
Outside where?
Just sitting there in the other hall.
Oh, in the other hall.
In the hall, yeah.
And the devotees from New Zealand.
Yeah. Kids have to go, so.
You don't want to miss the devotees from New Zealand. Weather here is kind of warm, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is normal for this time of year.
Or then maybe it's raining today. Yeah, it is actually warm, but it's just cold yet.
Quite warm, yeah. Tighten that up. Hare Krishna. So, all right. So this is called Saparshada Gora Viraha Vilapa. All right. Jai Hanilo Prematanda Korana Prachu Jai Hanilo Prematanda Korana Prachu Jai Hanilo Prematanda Prachu Jayanilo Premanana Varuna Prachu Helo Prabhupota Kehamana Acharya Thakur Shiva. Gauranga Gunera Nitya Gota Kele Prabhu. Jai Sabha Sangira Sangye Jai Koila Pila Jai Sangana Praya Kande Naranam Das Jai Sangana Praya Kande Naranam Jai Anila Prema Danda Una Rajo Jaya Jaya Thakur, Jaya Jaya Thakur, Jaya Jaya Thakur, Jaya Jaya Thakur. Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paravitakacharya, also Teda Satashi Shimad. His Divine Grace Savaya Charana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Mahashila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shaima Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Maturanam Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Manamai Ki Jai. Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Putle Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deja Dharani. Okay. So let's read the translation to this nice poem by Narottam Das Thakur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and was filled with compassion and mercy, where is such a personality as Srinivasa Acharya? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. So, as I mentioned, today is the disappearance day of Vrindavan Das Thakur. Vrindavan Das Thakur is one of the primary biographers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The three primary biographies of Lord Chaitanya, of course, are Vrindavan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Bhagavat, then we got Krishnadas Kaviraja's Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Lochan Das Thakur, Chaitanya Mangal. So you got these three, there's many other biographies. And as I mentioned last night to the devotees, that I'm studying another biography that is a compilation of all the biographies. And that was written by Prabhupada's godbrother, who was from Germany. Very interesting, because we mentioned last night, Prabhupada's other godbrothers went to Germany to preach Krishna consciousness, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was actually paying their bills. Interesting, when Prabhupada went to America, nobody was paying his bills.
Yeah.
But when they went, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was paying their bills, and they didn't have much results except for this one devotee and another devotee in the UK named Vinod Vani, lady. So anyway, but this devotee was a very, very good devotee. Later on, he became a guru, the first Western guru in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And we told the story last night, but some of you weren't there. And he actually was imprisoned in India during World War II because he was German. They put all the Germans in prison. And he preached in prison and made some devotees in prison amongst the other Germans. So he, basically he's the first Western, in one sense, the first Western person in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And he was very, very dear to Prabhupada. He and Prabhupada would spend time talking to each other because he came to India, obviously. That's when he was in prison. And he would relate to Prabhupada what happened during World War II, which is very interesting. I mean, it's nothing to do with Vrindavan Das Thakur, but I thought it was just an interesting point that I was remembering. And he said during World War II, all the Germans were praying to God. Some of you may have heard this before. Please let my son come back from the war. And then all the English people were praying to God for the same thing. And Prabhupada said something like, God was actually confused what he should do. Of course, with both parties, unless they were really religious, it was their karma.
Yeah.
So it's not that God intercedes in such affairs. The only time God intercedes is when there is a devotee. Then Krishna says he protects us. Aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshayashyami ma suchaham. And also nanyas chinti andamam ye janak paripasate tesham nechiviyuktamam yogikshem vahamyaham. For those who worship me fully, I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So let's get back to Vrindavan Das Thakur, who was one of the main biographers. I thought it'd be important to talk about him today. So Vrindavan Das Thakur, a little history, was the son of a Brahmin named Vaikuntha Das and his wife Narayani. So Vaikuntha Das, the father of Vrindavan Das Thakur, passed away at a very early age when, actually before Vrindavan Das Thakur was born. So Narayani was actually taken care of in the house of Srivas Thakur. She was just like a widow, and taken care of. And then Vrindavan Das Thakur was born there, and he took his education in a place called Mama Gachi. So actually Vrindavan Das Thakur was quite younger than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In fact, his mother was only 4 years old when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to manifest pure love of God in Navadvip. Now we know that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before he began to manifest love of God, he acted like a rhetorician, I mean someone interested in rhetoric, or someone interested in Nyaya. Nyaya, of course, is the philosophy of philosophy. Just arguing with people. And the devotees would pray to Krishna, especially Dvaitacharya and Srivas Thakur. They would pray to Krishna, please let this Nimai Pandit become a devotee, because if he becomes a devotee, he's going to be a great preacher. So We actually find that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did the same thing later on when he converted people to Krishna consciousness. Many of the people became great preachers. Like, it was one of them, when Lord Chaitanya went to South India and stayed at the house of Venkatapata. Whoops. Not only did he convince Gopal Bhatta Goswami to become a great preacher, but there was another person named Prabhupada Saraswati, who was the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who actually went to Vrindavan and composed many, many Vaishnava literatures. So, in any case, in back to Vrindavan Das Thakur, so Narayani's mother was only 4 years old when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to manifest his divine nature in the courtyard of Srivas. And Narayani, when she was young, she received the remnants of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's meal. I mean, there's a whole story that Lord Chaitanya gave her his remnants and she began to dance in ecstasy. So, of course, because of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's remnants, she was able to give birth to such a great soul as Vrindavan Das Thakur. So, Vrindavan Das Thakur is sometimes mentioned as an incarnation of Srila Vyasadeva and also a coward boy, a combined incarnation, named Kusuma Pida, one of Krishna's coward boys. And of course, this means that he was in the what? Sakya Ras. Everybody knows what the Sakya Ras is?
Friendship.
Friendship relationship. So, because he was in the Sakya Ras, he actually took initiation from Lord Nityananda. And by the time he took initiation, Lord Chaitanya had already left the planet. So it wasn't really, I mean, he was a contemporary in one sense, but he never really met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so, anyway, so he took initiation from Lord Nityananda, and he was Lord Nityananda's last disciple before Lord Nityananda left this material world. So, and so, let's see. Oh yeah, so another point about Narayani that's noted down here, his mother, that when Krishna was a child, he had a nursemaid named Ambika who had a younger sister named Kilimbika. And during the time of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation, the same Kilimbika used to eat the remnants of foodstuffs. That was Narayani of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Wow.
So, this is a book written by Kavi Kanapur. It's called Gora Ganadesh Deepika, and it delineates all the residents of Vrindavan, who they were in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's an interesting quote. Srila Vyasadeva described the pastimes of Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Vyasa of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Vrindavan Das. So it's described that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were his life and soul. And another interesting factor about his life, 4 years before the birth of Vrindavan Das Thakur, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. So his mother was probably like 16 or 17 years old. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he took initiation from Lord Nityananda, he was 20 years old. And he acquired a profound command of several theological books. And he's actually a very, very educated person. Whoops, thank you. Forget about that. So, Vrindavan Das Thakur is primarily describing the Leela of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's early pastimes. And so there's very few later pastimes told in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's mostly the early pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because that's what he had information about. So therefore you find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami just touches briefly upon the early pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This was out of his Vaishnava etiquette to respect Vrindavan Das Thakur, who he considered to be Srila Vyasadeva. So he didn't want to reiterate, in other words, mention again the same pastimes that were elaborately described by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So instead, he went to the pastimes that weren't elaborately described, particularly the later pastimes. And so he was also, Vrindavan Das Thakur was also an authority of music. Actually, many of these devotees were good musicians. And he was a worshiper as in Sakyabhav, which you mentioned before. And he has deities of Shishi Gordatai that are still there in a place called Denuwar in West Bengal. So Krishnadas Kaviraj, finally we'll end with this, and we'll see if we go to the Bhagavatam. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies the Chaitanya Bhagavat of Vrindavan Das Thakur in his Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is from the Adi Leela 8:33 to 40, and I'll read this particular quote. O fools, just read Chaitanya Mangal. By reading this book, you can understand all the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, of course, he called the Chaitanya Bhagavat Chaitanya Mangal, but later on, it was given the name of Chaitanya Bhagavat. So, because Lochan Das Thakur wrote the book called the Chaitanya Mangal later on. So by reading this book, one can understand all the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Vyasadeva has compiled the pastimes of Lord Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Thakur Vrindavan has depicted the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Thakur Vrindavan has composed Chaitanya Mangal. Hearing this book will annihilate all misfortune. By reading Chaitanya Mangal, one can understand the glories or truths of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and come to the ultimate conclusion of devotional service to Lord Krishna. In the Chaitanya Mangal, also known as the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Sri Vrindavan Das Thakur has given the conclusion and essence of devotional service by quoting from the authoritative statements of Srimad Bhagavatam. If even a great atheist hears Chaitanya Mangal, think about this, he immediately becomes a great devotee. The subject matter of this book is so sublime that it appears that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has personally spoken through the writings of Sri Vrindavan Das Thakur. I offer millions of obeisances unto the lotus feet of Vrindavan Das Thakur. No one else could write such a wonderful book for the deliverance of the fallen souls. So Vrindavan Das Thakur ki jai. So I guess we have time to go into Bhagavatam. So any requests as far as parts of the Bhagavatam you'd like to hear from, or should we just pick something up that's at random?
Last time we were talking about Devuti and
Yeah, Kardama.
Vrindavan.
Yeah, okay, so let's go back to the third canto. Give me a second. Wow. Actually, there's a verse that I'm learning right now. It's really a beautiful verse. So we're skipping ahead a little bit from where we were reading before. But anyway, we'll skip ahead. This is from the third canto, 33rd verse, text 6. Those of you who have devices. Okay, ready?
One more time, Judas.
3:33, 6. 3:33, 6.
Yes.
Everybody has a device, put it on mute, please, so it doesn't disturb class. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Do you have a tissue or something? Oh, there's tissues down there. Thank you. All right. Yan Namadeha Shravananukirtana Yat Pravanat Yat Smaranat Api Vachit Shvado Api Sajja Savanaya Kalpate Kuta Punas Te Bhagavan Nu Darshanat Yannamadeya Shravananu Kirtanat Yat Pravanad Yat Smaranad Dapikvachit Swadopi Sajja Savanaya Kalpate Kutapanaste Bhagavanu Darshanat Yannamadeya Shravananu Kirtanat Yat Pravanat Yat Smaranat Dapikvachit Swadopi Sajja Savanaya Kalpate Tapunaste Bhagavan Darshanat Yanhamadeya Shravananu Kirtanat Yat Pravanad Yat Smaranat Dapikvachit Swadopi Sajja Savanaya Kalpate Tapanaste Bhagavanu Darshanat. Okay.
Yannamadeya Shravananu Kirtanad Yat Pravanad Yat Smaranad Api Kvachit Swadopi Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate Kutah Punaste Bhagavanu Darshanat
Yannamadeya Shravanaku Kirtanad Yat Pravanad Yat Smaranad Api Kvachit Swadopi Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate Kutaha Punasta Te Bhagavanu Darshanat
Yannamadeya Shravananu Kirtanad Yat Pravanad Yat Smaranad Api Kvachit Swadopi Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate Kuta Punaste Bhagavanu Darshanat.
Okay, ladies.
Yannamadeya Shravananu Kirtanat Yat Pravanad Yat Smaranad Api Swadopi Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate Kutah Punaste Bhagavanu Darshanat
Kuta punaste bhagavanu darshana.
Yannamadeya Shravananukirtana
Yannamadeya Shravananu Kirtana.
Yat Pravanat Yat Samranat Api Kavache
Yat Pravanat Yat Smaranat Api Kvache.
Svadopi Satya Savanaya Kalpate
Svadopi Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate.
Puta Punaste Bhagavanu Darshana
Tuta punaste bhagavanu darshana.
All right. Yat,
Yat,
of whom
of whom
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Namadeya,
Namadeya,
the name,
the name,
Shravana,
Shravana,
hearing,
hearing,
Anukirtana,
Anukirtana,
by chanting,
by chanting,
Yat,
Yat,
to whom,
to whom,
Pravanat,
Pravanat,
by offering obeisances,
obeisances,
Yat,
Yat,
whom,
whom,
Smaranat,
Smaranat,
by remembering,
remembering,
Api,
Api,
even,
even,
Kvachet,
Kvachet,
at any time,
at any time,
Shwa Abda,
Swarada,
a dog eater,
the dog eater,
Api,
Api,
even,
even,
Satya,
Satya,
immediately,
immediately,
Savanaya,
Savanaya,
for performing Vedic sacrifices,
performing Vedic sacrifices,
Kalpate,
Kalpate,
becomes eligible,
becomes eligible,
Kuta,
Kuta,
what to speak of,
what to speak of,
Puna,
Puna,
again,
again,
Te, you,
you,
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan,
O Supreme Personality of Godhead,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Nu, then, Darshanat,
Darshana,
by seeing face to face.
face to face,
So translation, to say nothing of the spiritual advancement of persons who see the Supreme Personality, Supreme Person, face to face, even a person born in a family of dog eaters immediately becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices if he once utters the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or chants about him, hears about his pastimes, offers him obeisances, or even remembers him. So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, herein the spiritual potency of chanting, hearing, or remembering the holy name of the Supreme Lord is greatly stressed. Rupa Goswami has discussed the sequence of sinful activities of the conditioned soul, and he has established in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that those who engage in devotional service become freed from the reaction of all sinful activities. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. The Lord says that he takes charge of one who surrenders unto him, and he makes him immune to all reactions to sinful activities. And by chanting the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes so swiftly cleared of all reactions to sinful activities, then what is to be said of those persons who see him face to face? Another consideration here is that persons who are purified by the process of chanting and hearing become immediately eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices. Generally, only a person who is born in a family of Brahmins, who has been reformed by the 10 kinds of purificatory processes, and who is learned in Vedic literature, is allowed to perform the Vedic sacrifices. But here the word studya immediately is used. And Sridhar Swami also remarks that one can immediately become eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices. A person born in a family of the low caste, which is accustomed to eat dogs, is so positioned due to his past sinful activities. But by chanting or hearing once in pureness or in a offenseless manner, he is immediately relieved of the sinful reaction. Not only is he relieved of the sinful reaction, but he immediately achieves the result of all purificatory processes. Long purport. Taking birth in the family of a Brahmin is certainly due to pious activities in one's past life. But still, a child who is born in a family of a Brahmana depends for his further reformation upon initiation into the acceptance of the sacred thread and many other reformatory processes. But a person who chants the holy name of the Lord, even if born in a family of chandalas, dog eaters, does not need reformation. Simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, he immediately becomes purified and becomes as good as the most learned Brahmana. Sridhar Swami especially remarks in this connection, Anena Pujotvam Lokshate. Some caste Brahmanas remark that by chanting Hare Krishna, purification begins. Of course, that depends on the individual process of chanting, but this remark of Sridhar Swami's is completely applicable if one chants the holy name of the Lord without offense, for he immediately becomes more than a Brahmana. As Sridhar Swami says, Huzatvam, he immediately becomes as respectable as a most learned Brahmana and can be allowed to perform Vedic sacrifices. If simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord one becomes sanctified instantly, then what can be said of those persons who see the Supreme Lord face to face and who understands the descent of the Lord as Devahuti understands Kapila Deva? Usually initiation depends on a bona fide spiritual master who directs the disciple. If he sees that a disciple has become competent and purified by the process of chanting, he offers the sacred thread to the disciple just so that he will be recognized as 100% equal to with a Brahmin. This is also confirmed in the Hari Bhakti Vilas by Sri Sanatana Goswami. As a base metal like bell metal can be changed into gold by a chemical process, any person can be similarly changed into a Brahmin by Diksha Vidhana, the initiation process. It is sometimes remarked that by the chanting process one begins to purify himself and can take birth in his next life in a Brahmin family and then be reformed. But at this present moment, even those who are born in the best Brahmin families are not reformed, nor is there any certainty that they are actually born of Brahmin fathers. Formerly, the Garbhadan reformatory system was prevalent, but at the present moment there is no such Garbhadan or seed-giving ceremony. Under the circumstances, no one knows if a man is factually born of a Brahmin father. Whether one has acquired the qualification of a Brahmin depends on the judgment of a bona fide spiritual master. He bestows upon the disciple the position of a Brahmana by his own judgment. When one is accepted as a Brahmana in the sacred thread ceremony under the Pancharatriki system, then he is Dvija or twice born. That is confirmed by Sanatana Goswami, Dvijatvam Jayate. By the process of initiation by the spiritual master, a person is accepted as a Brahmin in his purified state of chanting the holy name of the Lord. He then makes further progress to become a qualified Vaishnava, which means that a Brahminical position, the Brahminical position, is already acquired. Quite an interesting verse. Yannamadeya Shravanada Kirtanad Yat Pravanan Yat Smaranadapi Kvachit Shwadopi Sadyat Savanaya Kalpade Gudat Punastai Bhagavan Nudarshanat Somagana Tivarandasha Yananjana Shlakya Chachur Mrinitam Yena Tasvai Shivay Maha. So there's a lot of stuff here in the purport and in the verse. We'll talk about a few things. One, Prabhupada mentions the 10 purificatory rituals that a Brahmana undergoes. And these are called the samskaras. Yes. Many of you may know, as I've talked about what a samskara is. The word samskara, sam, means perfect or complete. Kara is like the same thing as work or practice. So basically means a complete activity, just taking the indirect meaning, that creates an impression on the subtle body. That's why we have our, Garbhanan Sanskar, Anjeshti Sanskar, and all these other sanskars that are performed. And Namakarana, these are some of the sanskars that a Brahmin performs. And actually Prabhupada said that if a Brahmin doesn't perform the Garbhanan Sanskar before they have a child, of course that's the seed-giving ceremony, then the whole family becomes a malecha. So even if you're born, some of you may have been born in Brahmin families, ask your parents, did you do the Garbhanan Sanskar? They said, no. Your whole family, not only the child becomes a malecha, but the whole family loses its caste. That's why Prabhupada says, no one knows, even someone born in a Brahminical family, whether the father was a Brahmin, because if the father doesn't, it's interesting, because how would no one know? Because the person's a Brahmin, he's a Trivedi, Chaturvedi, North India Sharma or whatever. And because no one knows whether he's actually performed the Garbhanan Sanskara. And his parents probably didn't do it either, so therefore they're all malechas. So my birth is equal. So anyway, to all of you. So anyway, it's interesting. So these samskars are very, very important. But the chanting of Hare Krishna transcends all these samskars. And if one becomes a Vaishnava, of course, one should still perform some of the samskaras. But the interesting thing is, and I was just reading in this interesting book that I was talking about yesterday, is that if we don't have faith in the holy name, and we perform some of the samskaras instead of chanting the holy name, or some of the samskaras in the improper situation, we may actually be committing an offense. And I'll explain the context of that particular statement. That this biography of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes the 6 sons of Advaitacharya. And Lord Advaitacharya had 6 sons. And 3 of the sons were actually devotees. And 3 were not devotees and didn't have faith in Advaitacharya. Actually, some of them had really improper understandings of who Advaitacharya was. Some of them thought, this shows that even you may be the Supreme Personality of God and your children may turn out to be complete demons. Anyway, of course, none of your children, don't worry. So, but that happens. Krishna had a son who became a demon, so Advaitacharya. So some of the sons considered Advaitacharya to be God and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his servant. And other sons were actually impersonalists or Mayavadis. So getting back to the samskara point, is that one of the sons thought Advaitacharya is just an ordinary person. He thought, well, he may be suffering in hell, so therefore I have to do pinda for him. And one of the traditional, it's actually quite interesting, one of the traditional forms of pinda is that you make a straw image. You've ever heard of this before? Of your forefather? I don't know if this is a Bengali thing in particular. And you burn it. So this is some scar. Because in this way, you're saving your forefather from hell. That's why the son is called a putra. Someone who saves his forefather from hell. So imagine doing that for Advaitacharya. So
we do that for Ravan in the Shara.
That's something different. But this is actually a ceremony somehow or other. It's in Bengal.
This is for your family.
Yeah, but somehow or other, you're thinking. Let's say your father was a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, if you do this, all the ceremonies you do for an ordinary person, it's an offense.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So let's say, someone like Srila Prabhupada passes away. You don't do the pinda for him.
No.
It would be a great offense. But if you're a devotee and you have a relative who's not a devotee, then you do the pinda for him. You can do it. But basically the best thing is chanting Hare Krishna. I get asked about this all the time in Fiji.
Yeah.
They want to do this, they want to have kava, they want to put out cigarettes and alcohol for their forefathers, just like, if that's pinda, that's... He said, you're sending your forefathers to hell. So anyway, it's really important to understand about these Vedic ceremonies. Some of them are applicable, obviously. I mean, we do many samskaras. We have the namakarna, we have the initiation and everything like that. But it's all centered. It's not a ritual. It's all centered around chanting Hare Krishna. So even if your relative is not a devotee, the best thing is you have kirtan for him, you supply prasadam for the devotees, and that will actually save him more than anything else. Not only will it save him, but it will actually bring the person to a higher platform and enable the person to perform devotional service in their next life. Like I know in the case of my relatives who passed away, I didn't do pinda for them. What I did is I chanted Hare Krishna, prayed for them, and incidentally, Krishna arranged for a nice way for my mother to pass away and my father to pass away like that. Somehow or other, Krishna arranged that. So this is very important. So another point, actually there's many points here, that's really radical, that if even someone chants Hare Krishna once, or basically offers obeisances, he becomes eligible to perform a sacrifice. It's quite interesting. Vedic sacrifice. Now there's an interesting thing. Vedic sacrifices are different than Pancharatriki sacrifices. There's actually the Vedic path, the Pancharatriki path. There's these two different paths. And of course we have Pancharatriki, and the Bhagavad Gita, there's actually three paths. Everybody knows about these things? Vedic is like, chanting the mantras of the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda, and being a Vedic ritualistic Brahmin, keeping a fire going in your house all the time. Did they do that when you were
In South India, yeah.
South India, they keep a fire.
Yeah.
Household.
Yeah, that's common.
That's why the saying comes, keep the fire burning, the household fire burning. And so, that's a Vedic Brahmin. Very, very ritualistic. And an example of that was in Kanchipur, where Ramanujacharya appeared. And Ramanujacharya's wife, Raksha Kambal, was born in a Vedic family like that. And so, because she was very, very attached to her Vedic rituals, she did not respect Ramanujacharya's Siksha Guru, whose name was Kanchipurna. You probably know this story. And she offended him in different ways, offended his wife in different ways. And that's why Ramanujacharya took sannyas.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story. We could tell that. So what happened is that, that shows the contrast between people who are very attached to the Vedic rituals and those who are Vaishnavas. And Ramanujacharya accepted the principle elaborated on in this particular verse, and he associated with this, quote, lower caste. Wasn't actually lower caste, but by normal societal standards, he appeared to be lower caste. You understand? But he was a pure Vaishnava.
Yeah.
So Ramanujacharya accepted him as his primary Siksha Guru when he was young. Yeah. And so he would invite him over to his house to take prasadam. And one day he came over to Ramanujacharya's house, and Ramanujacharya wasn't there, so Rakshakambal, Ramanujacharya's wife, the ritualistic brahmana, fed him prasadam, but then took the remnants and fed them to the dogs or whatever, the animals, threw them away. And when Ramanujacharya heard this, he was very upset with his wife. Then later on, Rakshakambal and his Kanchipurna's wife were taking water out of the well simultaneously, and some of the water from the wife of Kanchipurna fell into the bucket of Ramanujacharya's wife. And Ramanujacharya's wife just dumped the water back in the well. Contaminated water has been touched by you. Yuck. And so when Ramanujacharya heard this, he decided, you got to get rid of this wife. Anyway, so, but it wasn't in the modern world where you got to get rid of this wife and get another one. Yeah, nowadays, people are thinking, this one doesn't work out. Maybe I'll find someone who works out. But the traditional method of getting rid of your wife, sorry, I shouldn't say getting rid of your wife. Yeah, but the traditional way of dealing with a situation like that is taking sannyas. Actually, Chanaka Pandit says, apriya vadana ranyatena gantavyam yata ranya natagraham. That if your wife doesn't speak pleasingly, take sannyas. So all you ladies should remember that. Better speak pleasing to your husband, or else I'll have a lot of assistants. I mean, I don't mind. I mean, you can use a traveling assistant,
Yes, that is good.
That's instruction of Chanaka Pandit, anyway. Aranyatena gantavyam yatagram. Well, the statement is that if your home is already like the forest with wild animals, so one might as well go to the forest. So anyway, get back to the story. So Ramanujacharya, he basically made a trick, and he said to a Brahmin, send a message to my wife, make believe it's not from me, make believe it's from her father, that there's a marriage going on in her village. She has to go immediately to that marriage. So his wife gets that message. Okay, she says to Ramanujacharya, or he was just Ramanuja at that point, I got to go to this village for the marriage. He says, don't worry, I'll be following you very shortly. Instead of following her very shortly, he goes and takes a sannyas. So Prabhupada called that a transcendental trick. And Prabhupada said he also did a transcendental trick like that with his family.
Yeah.
And yet Prabhupada says the same thing, because his wife did not speak pleasingly.
Yeah.
And did not support his Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
She was also into ritualistic stuff like that. So, anyway, so Ramanujacharya is showing us that point, that if someone is chanting the holy name, then that person is automatically a Brahmin, even though born in a lower caste family. And so, anyway, that's very interesting. And then later on, Ramanujacharya actually gave holy name initiation to all the Malachas too. There's that story when he went to see Goshti Purna. And all these devotees, Goshti Purna and Kanchi Purna, were actually disciples of Yamunacharya, the great Yamunacharya. And, you know Yamunacharya. Yeah, South, if you're from South India, you know about him. So, anyway, later on, Ramanujacharya, such an interesting story because it actually confirms this point here in the Bhagavatam. Ramanujacharya was begging this Goshti Purna for a mantra. Give me this mantra, and if you give me this mantra, actually everyone knew the mantra already, but they hadn't been initiated in it. That's another point. That one has to accept the mantra, even the Hare Krishna mantra, from the lips of a pure devotee. It's not that you just start chanting Krishna Krishna, but it has to come from the lips of a pure devotee. You have to hear it, just like when I was young, I heard Prabhupada chanting on the radio, the Hare Krishna mantra. So anyway, So Ramanujacharya wanted to get this mantra, which was Om Namo Narayanaya, which many of you heard before. It was well known, but it's not that everybody was initiated in that mantra.
Yeah.
So he begged Goshipurna for the mantra, and Goshipurna first refused. He said, anyone who hears this mantra will get liberated. I don't think you're qualified. He said to Ramanujacharya, who was certainly qualified. And eventually, he agrees, and he says, but don't tell this mantra to anyone else. And Ramanujacharya says, okay, I won't tell it to anyone else. Cross my fingers. Anyway, this shows that sometimes you can break a promise if there's a better effect to it, which is interesting. But you have to be very careful about that particular principle. Like Grandfather Bhishma, we spoke, should have broken his promise to be loyal to Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, but he didn't. So Ramanujacharya got this mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya, and he gets initiated by the mantra, and he immediately goes to the tallest building in the city and cries out to everybody, it's time for initiation. And he initiates everybody in the Hare Krishna, Om Namo Narayanaya, which is not different than the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And in this way, everyone gets liberated, and Ramanujacharya is initiating guru, that was the initiating guru rather than his Shiksha guru, says to him, you've offended me, you're going to hell. And he says, I'm willing to go to hell to save everybody else. And so his guru bows down to him at this point, says, you're actually my guru and I'm your disciple. So the point is the holy name, which Srila Prabhupada is actually given to everybody. And, the Hare Krishna mantra was known before, and even we have professional musicians who chant the Hare Krishna mantra. And even in India, you have the professional musicians who chant the Gayatri mantra, the Brahma Gayatri. Everybody knows about that. Some people chant it in kirtan, which is absolutely ridiculous. But it didn't have any effect. Or even the Bhagavad Gita, which was in the Western world way before Prabhupada came. You find people like Albert Einstein who read the Bhagavad Gita and, other great personages in the Western world. But it didn't have any effect. So the point is the holy name has to be heard from the lips of a pure devotee. So when Prabhupada came, then the holy name became prominent, and so many people became Vaishnavas all around the world. And as mentioned in this particular verse, they became qualified for performing Vedic rituals. Now, at the same time, Prabhupada comments that we don't have people who are not second initiated performing Vedic rituals. No, of course, I have to go back. There's Vedic rituals. We don't do Vedic rituals in the Krishna conscious movement. We don't do those Vedic rituals. There's Pancharatrika rituals, which we do. That's the deity worship under the instruction of Narada, the Narada Pancharatra and other Pancharatrika literatures. And also we perform activities, not rituals, that are called rituals, which is called Bhagavat Vidhi. Bhagavat Vidhi is the chanting, which is the most important activity of the Krishna consciousness movement, which is the chanting of the holy name, the philosophy, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we've been reading, and the glories of Krishna from the different Vedic literature, or different Vaishnava literatures. And of all those different processes, Bhagavad Vidhi is most important. But Pancharatrika Vidhi is performing of sacrifices. It's not only performance of sacrifice, it's the deity worship, having sadhana, rising early in the morning, and putting on tilak and everything like that is actually important to keep one, let's say, in the mode of goodness. That's why. Keeps one in the mode of goodness. So, technically speaking, a sannyasi doesn't generally do Pancharatrika Vidhi. That's done by the grihastas. And sannyasi is pretty much 99-100% like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After he took sannyas, he didn't do any fire sacrifices or anything like that. In fact, he shaved off his sika. That was his tradition in sannyas. However, for the purpose of preaching Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada had sannyasis, including himself, even do marriage ceremonies,
Yeah.
which is, basically it's prohibited. Actually, the tradition is in India that if one sees a sannyasi on the way to the marriage,
It's a bad sign. Yeah.
it's a bad sign,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
What to speak of a sannyasi is performing the yajna.
Yeah.
I guess that's why we have so many problematic marriages. In this Not really. But the point is, preaching is the essence, books are the basis, purity is the force. And so therefore, in ISKCON we have sannyasis do these things, but traditionally, no. Pancharatrika Vidhi is for the grahastas. And Bhagavad Vidhi is for the grahastas too, so the grahastas have both. And traditionally the sannyasis would just preach, like you see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's his life.
Yeah.
Just Bhagavad Vidhi. Just the chanting of the holy name, remembrance of Krishna's pastime, symptoms of ecstasy. And of course he went to see Lord Jagannath, but there's no mention that he actually did deity worship or anything like that. So it's interesting. But anyway, this Bhagavad Vidhi, or the chanting of the holy name, the chanting of Krishna Gata is enough to get one back to Godhead, but we take shelter of the Pancharatrika Vidhi to keep us, because we're in the material world, exposed to the other modes of nature, to keep us in the mode of goodness. Okay, we don't want to go on too long, there's a lot more in this verse. So any questions or comments? Yes?
Hare Krishna Gurudev. Gurudev, I remembered your lecture on Sriman Madhvacharya's disappearance.
Yeah.
And you were saying that Sriman Madhvacharya didn't believe that the Mahabharata was passed on well, so it was not it was
It's been corrupted, he said.
corrupted, yes.
Yeah.
So Gurudev, on that, when you mention Vaishnava literatures, how can we tell which one is bona fide, which is not corrupted?
Those that have been mentioned in that way, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and the other ones, certainly we read the Mahabharata, but we understand that a lot of the details there have been changed. By corrupted, it doesn't mean they're bad.
Yeah.
Usually in English we say something's corrupted, or he's corrupt. That means, wow, stay away from him. It just means, in this particular context, there's been things changed, taken away, put in, like that in literature. So that's why you have something like 80-something different versions of the Mahabharata in India. And of course, I would say those literatures which you can be sure of, you can accept 100% complete, like the Bhagavatam. And also the Valmiki Ramayana is its original form. So we understand that, because it's a poem, and the poem was actually memorized in a certain meter, and everything's in the same meter in the Valmiki Ramayana. So you got the Bhagavatam, and the works of the Goswamis, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's works. I think you have enough to read in this particular lifetime. We have the original works of Vrindavan Das Thakur, Lochan Das Thakur, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Sanatan Goswami. I think you have enough.
Yeah.
I don't really think you have even enough time to read all those things, do you? And so, don't worry about it. Although, I have read the Mahabharata. I'm not reading it right now, but I have read the Mahabharata. And one of my godbrothers, Sri Dayananda is coming out with his own edition of the Mahabharata, which is quite interesting. Have you heard it?
No,
I've heard about it, yeah.
Which is really interesting, and it presents such a tea in a completely different light.
Right.
She's no longer the fisherman's daughter, she's King Vasu's daughter, and King Vasu actually placed her there to protect her from the demons who were taking birth on the earth. Really interesting light, and it's his vision of the Mahabharata, and I think it's just as valid as the other editions.
Yeah.
Because nobody really knows. There wasn't a historian who was writing down. Vyasadeva was writing down, but that was changed. But it really, you don't have the internet records from those days. So you don't really know, all the details. You know there were the Pandavas, there was Krishna, obviously, and you know that there's Duryodhana, the main characters are always there. But exactly about, secondary characters like Satyavati, or what Krishna did in the battle of Kurukshetra, or every demoniac thing that Duryodhana did. You really don't know all those things.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things are left open to the imagination. So I found his edition, really interesting. He just writes as the first part of the Mahabharata, just the introductory part, where you have Satyavati and all that, which is really interesting. Yes, Satyavati is such an interesting person. She becomes more of a hero in his presentation, rather than a secondary character. So anyway, that's one explanation.
Because I was thinking in the chapter where Vishnudev is about to leave his body.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that he tells the Niti Shastra to Yudhishthir Maharaj.
That's right.
So that there is no mention of that in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In that chapter, if I have
Not all the details,
Not all the details.
but the Bhagavatam does mention that Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows and he spoke to Yudhisthira, yeah.
So it's like, okay,
And Yudhisthira basically didn't want to accept the kingdom.
yes.
And it's because of Bhishma Dev's encouragement that he accepted the kingdom. And then Bhishma Dev gave him instructions. I mean, it's a beautiful part of the Mahabharata, and I've read it, and I think it's quite accurate in many different ways, where he instructs how to be a good king. So I'm not saying the whole Mahabharata is
Yeah.
problematic. It's usually the details of the story. And this is mentioned by Sripad Madhvacharya in his Tatparata Nirnaya, which is his commentary on the Mahabharata, which I've read. And in this literature, Sripad Madhvacharya actually writes the Mahabharata from his own particular perspective, like he was there. And in one sense, you could say Madhvacharya's writing is probably much more accurate, because his brother was there. No, Mahabharata, not Hanuman. Bhimsen. You got the wrong literature there. Bhimsen. Bhimsen was there. And their brothers, the Vayuputras.
Yes.
Like that. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Agree with Mr. Sakmai Manovan. I have a question regarding the topic today we discussed, about performing the Vedic rituals.
Yeah.
So, as a devotees, should we do for the upcoming child, before conceiving?
Yeah, the Garbhanat Sanskar.
Yeah.
But the way the Garbhanat Sanskar that Prabhupada gave was that the devotees probably one time mentioned chanting 50 rounds before conception. And, eating pure foodstuffs, not going out to some rascal restaurant,
Yeah.
not watching Bollywood movies. It's obvious. The point is, our samskar is to remember Krishna. Yatsmaret Pundarigaksham. To remember the lotus-eyed Lord. And whatever parents are thinking about, the whole point is, the consciousness, whatever the parents are thinking about at the time of conception, that's the type of child they get. If you're thinking at the latest Bollywood movie, they'll get a lusty kid. Isn't it? I mean, it's just practical. You attract a certain type of soul.
Yeah.
You're thinking about your pet dog, then you get someone with dog-like consciousness as your son or daughter. And that's one reason why there's so many look at the story of Kashyapa and Diti.
Yeah.
Simply, it was just based on lust.
Yeah.
There's the time point, but I think even more important was the lusty consciousness. his wife, Diti, was just like pulling at his dhoti. Basically she was lusty. I mean, not the same way that people in Bollywood movies are lusty, but she wanted a kid, There's an impulse, it was lust in one sense. And because of that, you get a kid like Hiranyakashipu. So you wonder why your child's like sorry. But the idea is that the kid can be reformed. There's nature and nurture. Even we find many people born of demons, with a demoniac nature who are reformed by the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. And many people born of the nature of goodness or contaminated, like Bomasura, for example. His birth was very auspicious. God's your father,
Yeah.
isn't it? Varahadev, Bhumi's your mother. And then bad association, and then you become an asura.
Asura, yeah.
So I think the most important thing, just so you don't get scared about your kids, is the nurture, how you deal with them later on. That's why it's very important, when the children are going to school, to protect them from the nefarious influences they may have in the public schools. Really some bad influences. I mean, New Zealand, there's a really nice Hare Krishna school.
Yeah. So nice.
Hare Krishna school, and I've seen one of the devotees, Shiona. I don't know if you know Shiona. No. Anyway, Sanatan's son, daughter. Sorry, Sanatan's daughter, Saki's daughter.
Sakis, yeah.
Sanatana Saki's daughter, and she's going to the Hare Krishna school. She was going to the regular school, and she was so upset in Fiji. So actually, to help her, they brought her to New Zealand. Now she's going to the Hare Krishna school, and she's really, really happy in Krishna consciousness.
Beautiful school.
So unfortunately, here in Sydney, you don't have a Hare Krishna school.
Not a good one like that.
So beautiful.
But at least on the weekends, the children should have some fun association in Krishna consciousness, because association is more important than what you're born with. I mean, that's like Prabhupada came and he saved so many people, turned many people into devotees, even though we were born in Malacha families or Yavana or Rakshasa families. Okay. Time to... Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai. Prabhupada.